Hey guys, Aaron here with another fountain pen review. And today I was wanting to review another affordable Chinese fountain pen. And the pens that you see in front of you have been around for a while now. And these are the Jinhao 159 or Jinhao 159. And, Jinhao probably doesn't get quite as much exposure as they used to as far as Chinese pens go, because you've had other manufacturers that have really evolved and really changed the quality of what you would think of a Chinese fountain pen, such as Pen BBS, LIY or Live in You, Wing Sung, and the list goes on from there. Jinhao's kind of stayed true to what they have done all along, making really affordable fountain pens. Their quality control, like all Chinese pens for that matter, can be hit and miss. But you're not investing an extreme amount of money. In most cases, you're looking at a $5 to $10 price range, sometimes below the $5 price range. I actually paid $5 or less for all three of these pens that you see in front of you. The other cool thing about Jinhao, as a general rule of thumb, and also like the other Chinese pens, but especially Jinhao, is you can modify their pens really well by changing out, their nibs and doing a lot of really cool, fun things with them. All three of these pens actually have different nibs in them, which I will show off when we do the writing session at the end. So again, that's something that's really neat about them. They take standard international converters and cartridges, so you've got a wide range of options as far as that goes. So it's not something that you're stuck with just proprietary items. If you invest $5 in this pen, you can upgrade the nib and do some other things to it to make it a much better pen. And most of their pens, not all, but a lot of them, like the X450, the 750, have these metal bodies. So, they hold up pretty well. And I think that's another nice thing about them. So looking at these pens that you see in front of you, we're going to look at this one right now. So you've got your standard cigar-shaped pen. There's the top cap finial. The pen is obviously very reminiscent of a Mont Blanc 149. So, as those of you know, this is kind of obviously like a knockoff pen, so to speak. The clip itself is very springy. When this pen was my first one I got. I've had it now for about probably 3 years. It's one of my first fountain pens when I started collecting. And the clips held up fine. This pen got a lot of use when I first got it. I actually dropped it at one point, and the cap anyways, and you can see that dent that I created in it. But I mean, overall the pen has held up well. You've got, everything's chrome on the pen. When we look at that cap band, you'll see Jinhao across there. If you flip it around to the back, it says 159. And then just moving down the barrel, again, it tapers back down. You've got you've got another ring right here, but just a standard cigar-shaped pen. Nothing super special. Now, because this pen is made out of metal and it is a very long pen, a girthy pen, it is somewhat heavy. It's heavier than most pens that you would traditionally use. So for some people, that may not be something that would speak to you. It may cause a little bit more writing fatigue. For me, it doesn't really bother me. As far as dimensions for the pen, you're looking at about 5 7/8 inches capped. You're looking at 5 inches uncapped and a whopping 6.5 inches posted. So definitely a very large pen. And when you do post this pen, it is very back heavy. Unless you have very large hands, you probably really don't need to post this pen. But when you do, it does become very back heavy. It is a screw off cap. Takes a little, I think it's 3/4 of a turn to take this cap off. This one here just has the original Jinhao nib in there. As far as the section, you do have a step down. You've got metal threads there, but if you're somebody that holds up top, their threads are somewhat shallow, so they're not going to cut into your fingers. But you do definitely feel that step down on the section. Now the section tapers down, and then you'll notice you've got this metal ring down at the bottom that just slightly flares out. And with this section being girthier, I don't have any issues holding kind of right in the middle part of the section, and for me that works out really well. And you'll notice that it sits pretty well on the back end in my hand, so it's not a pen that I need to post. Now, as I said before, when you do post it, it becomes very back heavy, and kind of to me throws off the balance of the pen, so to speak. Now looking at the nib. Now you'll notice this one has it says Jinhao 18K GP, so 18 karat gold plated, and I would doubt that it's a gold plated nib. It's just your basic steel nib. This is a fine nib. You'll see you've got some different markings on the nib there, and then you flip it over and you've got your Jinhao feed there. Just your basic plastic feed. It is a friction fit feed, so it definitely is very easy to change out the nib on this pen. If you flip it over, and you probably can't see that, there is a notch down in the bottom that actually will tell you how to fit the feed back in when you put the nib and feed back in. But it works very well, very easy to take apart and put back into place. And then you take off the barrel, and it reveals that cartridge, or I'm sorry, the converter that I have in here. Again, it's a standard international converter, so you can use, you know, all sorts of different types of cartridges and converters. And really that's it as far as this pen goes. So you'll notice there's the nib that I have in this one. We'll set that one down for a moment. This one here actually has a pen BBS nib in it. So this is going to be that fine nib that pen BBS has, but of course it is kind of that bent nib design. Same feed, you know, same design there, but we've got a different nib in this one. So again, you know, kind of neat because you can put, you know, an altered nib, or you can alter the pen and put a different nib in there. You can obviously put goulet nibs in there. I actually have several of these pens with goulet nibs in them. And then we open this one up, and we've got a nib that a lot of you may be familiar with. There is that Zebra G nib. So again, a fun nib to play around with, cool nib to flex with. Again, there you can see that feed. Come on, focus. There it goes. So again, you know, another cool nib to play around with and all of that. So there you have it. Now, as far as for some sizing comparisons, there it is with a Pilot Metropolitan. So you can see that the pens are much larger. They are longer and obviously much more girthier. And then we'll throw in that Lamy Safari. Again, a little bit longer and obviously much more girthier. So definitely some really cool large pens. If you're someone that likes oversized pens, this could be an option for you. If you're not someone that's wanting to invest a lot of money right now in an oversized pen, you're looking at, you know, like I said, anywhere between $5 and $10. If you're willing to look enough, you can probably find these for $5 or less. And then from there, you can upgrade the nibs. You can play around with it. Just about any number 6 size nib will fit in there practically. You can get those Zebra nibs. I'm actually pulling them out right now. I think I got this off of Amazon. You can get a whole thing of these for like $10. I think that's what I paid for this. I think you might be able to see I've got a Jinhao nib just hanging out in there. And those are fun nibs to play around with. So again, cool pen to modify, cool pen to write with. What else can I say? Up next, guys, is going to be the writing sample, and then we'll finish up from there. I'll see you in just a moment. All right, guys, we are back, and we're going to do this guy first. So this is the regular Jinhao nib in this guy. Again, I'll kind of show that off real quick. All right, so as I stated before, this is the Jinhao 159. And you'll see this nib, it performs very well. And I don't think I've honestly had a Jinhao nib that did not perform. This would be a fine nib. And the ink that I am using is Birmingham Andy Warhol Purple. I really like this ink. It's probably not, I mean, I was going to go with a different color ink, but I honestly was just inking these pens up to ink them up. So there you have it. All right, writing sample. Now you can hear that feedback probably in the nib, and I would say it's really not toothy, but it definitely does give some feedback with the nib. But it kind of just lets you know it's there. I wouldn't. It's for me. It doesn't bother me. Now you're not gonna be getting crazy amounts of flex on here. You can get a little bit of line variation, but this is a fairly stiff nib. Now as far as wetness. I think it's a good combination with this ink. This is a really wet writer. This is actually one of the more wetter pens as far as Jinhao goes that I have. And again, I think the combination of ink with the pen works really well. So again, this one was the regular Jinhao nib. So I'm going to put JN over there for Jinhao nib. All right, so up next, we are going to try out this pen with the Pen BBS nib. And again, I know most of you have seen writing samples with these nibs, but probably another pen, so I wanted to show it off in this particular pen. So again, this is the Jinhao 159, but this has got the Pen BBS nib. And this is the fine bent nib. And the ink that I'm using is Birmingham ink as well. It has a really long name, and that is the Grandview. Avenue Midnight Horizon. Now it probably looks black on here, but it actually is kind of like a blue black. And it has more blue in it than you probably can see in the video. And when it dries, it definitely, you can see a lot more of the blue come through. But I like this ink. I do really like this ink. It's definitely a good ink to use in some darker pens as well. But I'm not a big fan of just regular black ink. So it's cool ink. All right, now as for a writing sample. There you have it. As far as line variation, you're getting a little bit more with these pens, or these nibs, I'm sorry. So there you can see it there. You can see it up above. And this is a wet writer too. Um, do It's definitely gives you a little bit finer line, but there you can kind of see the wetness there. You know, as far as which nib I prefer, and this is just between the two pens, I actually like the first nib. So if I was a pick, I would pick the orange one up top. So the regular Jinhao nib, I would pick that one. It's just a fun, or the nib for me just gives that right amount of feedback, and it's still another wet writer. But that's just my pick anyways. All right, so up next is going to be this guy with the Zebra G nib. And again, this is might take a minute to get this one to start. Zebra G nib. And the ink that I'm using is a Roshizuku Kon Peki. I love this ink. This nib is not that great on this paper, but it does the job. All right, writing sample. Ugh. Well, as you can tell, not a great writing sample. This is a really good nib, though, to use on other types of paper, like parchment paper, different things like that. I don't normally write with it on this, and it's been a long time since I've written with a G nib. This pen's been sitting in my drawer for quite a while. With that being said, this is still a really fun nib to just play around with. You get a really super fine line, and then you just can flex it like crazy. And I mean, sometimes you gotta let the ink kind of catch up to it. But now I've used this nib in other Jinhao pens, and it really depends upon what ink combination you're putting in here. So you got to bear in mind that your feed that you have is really not meant for flex writing. So if you've got ink that is not necessarily great for that type of writing, I found that the Roshizuku ink works pretty good for this. When I've tried diamine inks that are much faster drying and everything else, they don't work very well. Also, shimmering inks that may clog up the feed a little bit, probably not the best ink, but I mean this works great. You know, as far as wetness test, it's such a fine nib, but as you can tell, this thing can, I mean, look at it, just tons of ink. It would help if I knew how to write. Again, guys, just awesome what you can do with these pens. There you can kind of get a kind of zoomed out look on the different nibs. Now, if I have to choose for like everyday writing, I'm probably going to go with obviously the Jinhao or the Pen BBS. But if I'm talking about just having fun and just playing around, writing some letters, different stuff like that, I'm definitely going with the Zebra G nib. If you decide you want to mess around with these, bear in mind on the Zebra G nib, it's going to be much more difficult. You're going to have a lot more hard starts. You may have to prime the feed more. But that's just something that you'll have to work through. For me, these pens are really, really fun. I enjoy using them a great deal. And I don't really have anything bad to say about them because I'm not investing a lot of money in these pins. To me, they're kind of knock around pins, and because I can do these type of things, changing out nibs and playing around with them, I think they're definitely worth it. So in the comment section down below, guys, tell me what you think. What's your favorite nib? Do you own one of these? Have you, changed out the nib? What type of nib do you use? If you guys enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.